To share their insights today, we have with us Mr. Peter Cook, British Deputy High Commissioner to India, Ms. Anshu Bharatiya, CEO, Unlimited India, Ms. Shikha Shah, founder, Altmat. I now invite Mr. Dheeraj Bhojwani, CEO, AIC GUSEC Foundation, for his opening remarks.
Thanks, Rebecca. It's my pleasure to be on this panel, and on behalf of Gujarat University, AIC GUSEC and GUSEC, I welcome all the panelists, specifically Peter Cook, who's supposed to join us in a very short time, and also Ms. Anshu Bharatiya, who's the CEO for Unlimited India, a very renowned social enterprise incubator in India, and Ms. Shikha Shah, who's also a very renowned social entrepreneur in India, working in the material spaces. So, to start with, the reason to do this panel, or probably to have this discussion, was to have around how what's the participation of women in social enterprises space, specifically focused in India. The discussion will be around the national geography. We are not discussing about women entrepreneurship or participation of women in social entrepreneurship space in other parts of the world. So how has social enterprise space scaled in India, or how has it matured in last decade or so, and what role have women played in this scale, or in this travel which social enterprise space has seen? And we are fortunate to have a lot of panelists who share a good understanding of this space from the women entrepreneurs perspective and the social entrepreneurs perspective. So to start with, I would just start off with an introduction for our incubator. Gujarat University has established a social entrepreneurship focused incubator in the year 2020, which is backed by Atal Innovation Mission. The incubator's name is AIC GUSEC, which is focused around five core areas where we want to do impact as far as our state is concerned or the nation is concerned. The incubator is focused on agriculture, education, environment, healthcare, and financial inclusion. And these are the areas that we want to work with. And historically, in universities, exercises of entrepreneurship or startup, we have seen that women have played a very crucial role as in the social entrepreneurship space. Just to quote, OECD has done a research around this area a few years back, which is Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and they have seen that there is comparatively very less gender gap in the social entrepreneurship space. That means there are more number of women founders in the social entrepreneurship space compared to the mainstream entrepreneurship or the traditional entrepreneurship. So this is one core area which has probably seen a very different trend compared to the other trends in entrepreneurship. The research has also shown, some data has shown that the woman-backed entrepreneur ideas are more innovative as far as social entrepreneurship is concerned. There is more personal connect to the mission and vision of the company as when the idea or the startup is backed by a woman lead or woman entrepreneur. So these are some of the data that a lot of organizations have generated, and there are a couple of studies which have been doing that. The reason, probably what we understand, is probably women are more empathetic in nature, and social entrepreneurship needs kind of empathy which is required to work with the target group. Wherein in traditional entrepreneurship the focus would be around ROI, wherein in social entrepreneurship it is more about the social return on investment. And the research have also shown that about 31% of women entrepreneurs, for them profit is not the motivating factor. It is about the impact in business. It is the kind of change that you bring in the lives of people that you are working with. We have also seen that there are some sectors where women historically have shown more participation. I am not saying that these are the sectors which probably there are more. There are all sectors where we see the woman participating as entrepreneurs. But historically, there are some key focus areas or key sectors where there is more participation compared to other sectors. Industry sectors like healthcare, education, or climate change, for that case, have seen more number of women entrepreneurs coming in. To see that and to probably amplify that, Gujarat University has also done initiatives like Her Start, which is going on right now, which is an initiative to support early stage women entrepreneurs. When I say women entrepreneurs, that does not traditionally mean that it has to be a startup. Any woman entrepreneurs who's interested to work on any enterprise can come to this initiative and try to probably take support from the initiative. Gujarat University also is one of the very gender balanced organization. At the university level, there are about 30 to 40% of the department leads are from the women the women faculties. Similar way, there is enough gender balance in terms of students and other initiatives that we work to probably invite more women entrepreneurs in the social entrepreneurship space. AIC GUSEC also has some plans in the coming year to to run couple of programs only focused on women entrepreneurship in social enterprises space. These are the programs which will be backed by a couple of national bodies, a couple of international bodies. We have partnership with a couple of very great international organizations like UNICEF, GIZ, and others, which support these kind of initiatives, and more will be provided. More initiatives and more support will be provided to women entrepreneurship as far as social enterprise is concerned in coming year. I also would like to take a minute to explain about specific schemes which government of Gujarat also runs. There are some incentives for the women entrepreneurship in social enterprise space. If there is an idea which is backed by a woman leader, or if there is a core team member which is where you see a female founder as part of the team, there are special incentive schemes from government of Gujarat as additional sustenance allowance and probably access to more financial grant if the idea is backed by a woman lead. So these are some of the details from the incubator side and from the kind of schemes that we run. I understand in today's panel, we would like to understand this domain more from the woman entrepreneurs perspective, and also from Anshu's perspective, where we'll see, because the incubator works at a national level, and historically they have worked with a number of women entrepreneurs. We'll try to have more understanding about the domain and how can we have more participation from women in the social enterprise space. So that's it from my end. Over to you, Rebecca.
Thank you so much, Dheeraj. And now, taking the session ahead, I would like to introduce Ms. Shikha Shah, founder Altmat. Shikha is the founder of Altmat, a sustainable material startup that provides sustainable options for textile industries while also thoroughly utilizing agricultural waste by converting them into textile fibers. A Woman Transforming India, awarded by the Niti Aayog, Altmat is a startup incubated at GUSEC. I invite Ms. Shikha Shah to give an entrepreneurship context.
Sure. I'll quickly share my screen so that we're on the same page when we talk. Okay. So, hi, I'm Shikha. I'm the founder of Altmat, and at the outset, Happy Women's Day to you. Happy Women's Day to all the ladies out there. I'm cheering for you, but more particularly, Happy Women's Day to all the men out there. If you wonder why am I wishing men right now, maybe it also takes a high amount of mindset enhancement, and all those who are putting in that effort to be in line with the women of today, with the women of tomorrow. I encourage your spirit, and I am there to support and speak up as and when needed for that part as well. Having said that, what I would want to quickly do today in the next 10 minutes is talk about these three things, which is number one, use Altmat, the things that we are doing as a case study of how a women-led organization is building a strong case for impact and for profit startup. And then quickly moving into 2-3 pointers where I feel that impact through women entrepreneurship can be enhanced or can be leveraged in favor. And then moving on to Q&A, I know it might be tough to interact behind the screens, but in case you have any question and answers, you can put it up in the chat box. I try to take it up as and when we go. So yeah, well, to kind of build a case of what we do at Altmat, I just want you to wonder about this one question, which is, what are textiles made of? It's a very interesting subject because textiles is something which you and I touch daily, not in our clothes, but also in our carpets, in our pillows and whatnot. Now, if we study that, 83% of our textiles is some of these things, which is number one, polyester. Polyester is nothing but plastic. In fact, every time you and I wash it, we release microplastic into environment, which is a mammoth issue, not only for environment, but also for human health. The major material is cotton, which of course has bigger issues like water and pesticides. So around 1 kg of cotton, less than 3 pairs of your denim, kind of takes 10,000 liters of water. It's world's 24% of pesticides consumption that goes only to make cotton out of the agricultural lands that we engage. And the other rising thing is man-made cellulose, something like viscose, which is nothing but coming from deforestation. So a lot of forests are being brought down to be able to make a piece of cloth. All this and much more tells one thing, that textile industry needs to shift to better alternative materials. And that is what we make possible. The added beauty is we use agriculture waste as a source. By doing so, we engage in another line of impact in the whole value proposition. And not only from the environmental standpoint do we stop the farmers from burning that waste, but also create an additional income for the farmers to bring in the social change that is required. So overall, in terms of solution, you can think of a farmer growing this crop for food, as a part of which there would be certain waste that would happen. We ethically buy this waste, bring it to our factories, and convert it into a natural fiber. Once it is in a natural fiber format, we can make yarns out of it, and thus fabrics and all kinds of knits out of it. Now, as you see this as a proposition, what does this have to do with impact? When we talk about impact, we generally focus on something which can also be sustained, and thus we like to sum up things where the balance of impact and profit is found. So if you see, there are 3 things we generally talk about, which is number 1, environmental sustainability. Everything that we produce is sustainable from different lenses, from different science-based target for climate. For example, every kg of fibers that we make, we use less than 1/10 the water cotton needs. That would mean millions of liters of water saved per ton of production, which we do often daily. No pesticides, no microplastics, it is all biodegradable, recyclable, and so on. So environmental impact is one of the core lens that we see all our value propositions through. The other thing is social inclusivity. Now, a lot of times I do come across dilemmas where it is tough to have all the goodness and profit balanced. But what is really important is to build a culture that respects social inclusivity and not see inclusivity and profits as two opposite dynamics of a same continuum. So when we try to source our things, we do make sure that we include the cost of social inclusivity. How do we make sure that the daily wages are higher than that are taken care of? How do we make sure that the more than daily wages, which is housing facilities for the workers both on ground and farms, can be taken care of? So that is the part where we, instead of bringing into the numbers and the cost, we try to build it pretty much in the culture of the company. And the last part is functionally superior products, because, well, goodness cannot be an excuse to performance. So all that we build is not only good, but also better than the existing options. To pull up an example, these materials are naturally antibacterial, which most other materials are not. So it will be able to fight, smell, and smell much better, giving these materials not only a goodness status, but also a premium status. So this is how we play around profits as well as impact. When it comes to the scale of the company, we have been able to grow into a industrial scale unit and have the pleasure of working with best of the world's brands and engaging them into releasing these materials on these shelves through these brands. Having said that, I just want to move to this other part, using this case study, using my experiences of building this company. How can we bring an impact through women entrepreneurship? Now, the number one thing is only 14% of our businesses are owned by women. So when a woman decides to be an entrepreneur, whether it's in the space of impact or not, she is already bringing in that impact. Because the point then is, when you operate yourself as a worthy women entrepreneur, you have the chances to lay down the path of breaking glass ceilings, of seeing how are you behaved with and how do you behave with, of fighting things like queen bee syndrome, of fighting things like where to draw lines, what to communicate to the society. So I think when you talk about a women entrepreneur, even if it's not in the impact space, being a woman and deciding to be an entrepreneur, it comes with the power and responsibility of bringing impact by just having the virtue of being one. Now, moving beyond the gender, I think impact as a value proposition has been growing so steadily. There has been no better time in the history where impact has been seen such positively as a core business value proposition. And beyond what you're offering to the world, like what you're offering to your customers or how you're building profits around impact being at the core of your value proposition, it must also be noted that impact as a value proposition acts as a great fuel for the entrepreneur himself or herself too. Now that when it acts as a fuel, there is a higher chances of you being successful. There's a higher chances of you being able to have that perseverance as you move across that journey. So I genuinely feel that when we talk about impact through being an entrepreneur, it must also be looked other way around, where impact also contributes back to your entrepreneurship journey. The other thing, again, from the lens of gender, would be whenever you're doing something that requires you to think in different dimensions, like economics, supply chain, inclusivity, sustainability, it is so much important that you have the diversity of thoughts and feelings. I would lay down some stress on the term feelings. It is so important to be in line with the emotional energy of the solution, that you need different kinds of energies on the team. Often we see that teams lack the feminine energy, and when there is a woman leading such teams and talking about such subjects, they are able to leverage that feminine energy to bring in a diversity of thoughts and feelings. So whether you're leading upfront or in the back channels of the company, it is so much important to have the proper balance of masculine energy and feminine energy beyond the lens of just gender, so as to make sure that you can have diversity of thoughts and feelings leading you the right path. And the last part is looking beyond the lens of gender, which is if you're a woman or if you're in impact space or not, it is given that being an entrepreneur requires you to update your skills. It requires you to be well versed with certain things, and those challenges are similar across. However, what changes is that it is a non-denial fact. There is no debate about the thing that if you are an entrepreneur who is a woman, it would come with some extra challenges, but it also comes with the power to convert those extra challenges into soft powers. One of the tools to convert those challenges into soft power is investing in impact. Knowing how can you change the world for others kind of builds in the self-esteem that helps you change that dynamic for yourself. So, of course, focus on the things that are required beyond the lens of gender, but always be aware that how can you use the challenges that comes with your gender as a soft power? How can you convert them into weapons instead of seeing them as something that hinders you? So these have been the 4 things that I have been using quite a lot as in when we grow across this journey. And as a part of these 4 things, I just want to point out one thing, which is it is often said that with power comes the responsibility. Very famous dialogue from Spider-Man. It is equally true to see this statement other way around. With responsibility comes the power. So if you decide to step in the impact space, while being a woman, I think that's a crazy responsibility. And that crazy responsibility also brings in a lot of power. There are so many ecosystem benefits that now helps you use these things as powerful ways to kind of help not yourself out but the world out, and it must be seen in the right spirit. With that, thank you so much. That was something that I wanted to share across 8 minutes with you.
It was beautiful, Shikha. It was lovely listening to you, and thank you for such an informative yet at the same time such an inspiring session. It was beautiful. I would now like to introduce our guest of honor for this session, Ms. Anshu Bharatiya, CEO, Unlimited India. Anshu Bharatiya is the CEO of Unlimited India, a launchpad for early-stage social entrepreneurs that has impacted over 15.6 million lives in the last 13 years. She has over 26 years of experience working seamlessly in for-profit global and non-profit organizations. And whose passion lies in mentoring and taking social organizations to scale. Please join me in inviting Ms. Anshu Bharatiya for her guest of honor address.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's such a pleasure to be here. And Dheeraj, you made some amazing opening comments. And Shikha, after your passionate conversation, very crisply laid out, I almost don't know what to say. But so, yeah, happy Women's Day. More power to us. So I think just quickly telling you a little bit about Unlimited India. We are an incubator. And our whole theory of change is that India is a complex country with fairly wicked and complex problems. And customized, localized solutions are the way to go. Solutions which will go to scale, solutions which can stay small. There are passionate people who want to create change, and there are problems to be solved. Can we be the enabler and facilitator, pretty much like Gujarat, your own center, on creating that social change, empowering people by giving enough enabling ecosystems so that you can grow and grow faster, right? So I'm sure Shikha will echo this, that when she was starting off, she would have either got good mentors or somebody to go brainstorm with, friends, family, somebody who will just be your anchor, help you think through, help you brainstorm. So that's really what Unlimited India does. We are also a social incubator with the difference. We incubate not just social enterprises, but also NGOs. So we are agnostic to the legal status of your organization. Our theory is, you want to solve a problem, we are here to support you. So in, like Rebecca was mentioning, we've impacted 15.6 million lives. That's probably understated. But this is all through 270 entrepreneurs that we've incubated in the last 13 years. What is very interesting is, it is 55% are NGOs, 45% are social enterprises. But in this pool of 270 social entrepreneurs that we've incubated, more than 45% have a woman co-founder, either as a primary applicant or as a part of the founding team, which is, I think, just shows to saying that women are now, while the workforce numbers are decreasing, and they've been, it's been in the news that women in workforce have decreased, in social entrepreneurship, there's just, women have been there. So I think that is one good recognition to know that there is a space and place where women are doing well, they're thriving, and they bring a lot to the table. And Shikha covered some of it beautifully, really well. It was so articulated that I won't even repeat it. Now, typically you would see, I mean, what has been my aha in this? I joined Unlimited 4 years back. What's been my aha? When you think of sectors women entrepreneurs should be in, or women should be in, you'll typically say education, maybe healthcare, right? One of the bastions, and I have worked, I was the CEO of something called Revitalizing Rainfed Agriculture Network. It was a network of people doing amazing things with small and marginal farmers in agriculture. More often than not, I would be the only woman in a roundtable conversation where they were all men and people who've been doing stellar work. In, I think, 2017, 18 maybe, Prince Charles was in India, and there was a meeting, and he was meeting all the people that his philanthropy, British Asian Trust, was supporting in India. We had a contingent, they had funded an agriculture portfolio. It's only when I reached the venue, I realized there were only women. We were like 10 women representing agriculture in India, supported by British Asian Trust. So if I think of sectors where women will do well, I don't think there are any barriers. Today, you have inspiring stories of women who are doing work in construction. There's Shikha doing work in an extremely male-dominated areas in some senses, I mean, waste, etc. Absolutely education. Mental well-being, I think, is becoming a big sector which we need to address and see there. So there are women coming in, men coming in, but I think it's definitely a focus area where a lot more work needs to be done. So I would just say, you are an entrepreneur, you want to solve a social problem, you want to make business. I think we are only limited by our own vision. The world is infinite. From AI to blockchain to R&D, the world is your oyster. Don't hold yourself back because what is to think of what is the best sector suited for women. I think I mean, today look at global leaders. In almost so many MNCs, banks in India, we have women leaders. So I would just say, identify the problem you associate with. A social entrepreneurship journey, like Shikha also mentioned, comes with its own next level of challenges. Identify with the problem, understand your solution, know why you're doing it. Always remember your own why, and then identify the why of the organization and stay focused on the why. Especially when you enter the entrepreneurial journey, one why in the organization or how or what will open up another how or what, will open up another how or what. So it's easy to lose focus. Stay with your principle. Why you're doing it? What are you doing? What do you want to change? Or what is it that you want to see at the end of 10 years, 12 years? What will success look like to you? If you're able to define that, I think work backwards and you can do anything. So I think the opportunities are abundant. Definitely using technology or integrating technology in what you do, not making it your core, but use technology as an enabler. It really brings efficiencies into system. Start with programs, processes, have your world well defined so that as you scale, you don't have to revisit your paths. So I think, to me, because women entrepreneurs at Unlimited have been able to successfully prove various models. So Natasha, for example, works in waste management. She's working with governments, municipalities in doing waste end to end. There are two women co-founders who've done an exemplary job. They work with government officials, they work with municipal departments, they work with different people in that ecosystem for processing the waste, right? Which could look like a very deeply male-dominated area. Very, very successful, expanding successfully, right? So, like I said, I think really every possibility is a solution. Though I do think personally the few areas which are going to be next generation is climate change. There's enough conversation around it. Anything that you do, if you can ensure that you're setting up a socially responsible business, looking at climate change either as a direct or an indirect impact area, that might be very useful because there's funding, there's interest, the ecosystems are gearing towards it, and you might see more and more incentives coming towards that area. And of course, if we want to survive and live this world and make it livable for our children, that's definitely an area that we want to do. Immediately in the aftermath of COVID, livelihoods and skilling are becoming very important. Lots and lots of people, people whom we can't see, have lost their livelihoods. And interestingly, there's also going to be a lot of focus on local livelihoods. So if you're sitting in a tier 3 city, can you identify opportunities within that ecosystem and see where you can play a role, where you can be an enabler, a facilitator to even just enable the right people to be in the right place, right? So can you look at local solutions? I think that would be, if you just see the world the way it's going, that is going to be a trend which is going to be deeply appreciated as well. It'll come with its own sets of challenges. In fact, in another conversation, I was mentioning the ecosystem for entrepreneurship, while well developed in the metro cities, in tier 2, tier 3 cities, it starts disintegrating because you may not have the right CAs, the CSs, compliances are going up, especially if you're setting up an NGO, it's a lot more defined segment. So finding support may be difficult, but then I think you have a lot of us as incubators who are now playing that key role. We should be able to find you the path, and there should be enough more documentation available for following your dreams. So I would just like to stop here by saying, the world's your oyster, you're limited by your vision. I think I won't even make it any more saying what women entrepreneurs can do. I think you can do anything. We can do anything. So thank you. And it was really a pleasure being on this summit, and open for any questions at any point.
Thank you so much. This was really beautiful, and I really love the way in which how you made everything sound so simple. Some handy tips for a lot of entrepreneurs here to really get going. So thank you so much once again. It now gives me immense pleasure to introduce Mr. Peter Cook, British Deputy High Commissioner to India. Born in Kolkata, Mr. Cook came back to India after 50 years when he took up his appointment in Ahmedabad as the British Deputy High Commissioner to Gujarat and Rajasthan in January 2019. He served as the Managing Director of the British Chamber of Commerce in Qatar and as the Consul General and Director of Trade in Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Peter Cook to present the keynote address.
Rebecca, thank you very much. That was a very kind introduction. You flatter me a little with such a grand introduction to our audience today. First of all, both to you, to our other distinguished speakers, to our fellow guests, and to all the ladies and gentlemen that are listening online today. Firstly, let me say how delighted I am to join you. This is to celebrate International Women's Day. I'm delighted to be part of this. I've attended various other events in the course of the last few years to try and support this particular and very important cause. So it's a very appropriate way that I can raise my voice, I hope, in elevating the role of women, the status of women, and the impact that women can have on our society. So I'm very pleased, I think, to play a small part in what I hope will be a much more successful day. I'm also very delighted to join colleagues and friends from Gujarat University and from the Startup and Entrepreneurship Centre, and also the many distinguished women entrepreneurs that are on the panels today. I feel slightly a fraud being invited to speak on this kind of subject because I think, as is obvious, I'm neither a woman nor am I an entrepreneur. And so I should perhaps be told to be quiet and listen instead of trying to offer a view. But I hope you'll forgive those failings and allow me just to add a word on this particular conversation. I do feel I can add one particular contribution, something of interest and value, which is on the social impact that I think women entrepreneurs can have and women businesses, women-owned businesses can have. That's a subject much closer to my heart, and I feel slightly better qualified to contribute from that perspective. I hope you will allow that. I hope you will allow me a few words on that particular side. Let me start by giving a little UK perspective. The UK conducted a survey recently of entrepreneurial businesses. And of the 22,500 businesses surveyed, 7,200 were launched by female entrepreneurs. That sets a percentage of about 33%. And I was actually very encouraged when I read that. It's, I think, a great improvement on previous years. And I'm so pleased that there has been some progress and some positive development. But clearly, 33% is not enough. It doesn't reflect the balance of women in our society. And so there is a lot more that the UK needs to do to try and achieve a better gender balance and a better balance in the way that our businesses are run. That, I think, is a struggle. I appreciate that there are very fixed views and fixed attitudes that take some time to break down. But I'm pleased that slowly and surely we are seeing a change. And I think that signals a positive not just for the UK, but a positive for other countries that are also embarking on this particular change, that we can achieve this change if we persevere, that if we continue to raise our voices and advocate for the right kind of change and advocate for the right kind of conditions where women can take a more prominent role in business and in entrepreneurship. It was interesting because in the 4 years since we had done the previous survey, we found that just 17% of women were participating as women entrepreneurs. So from 17% to 33%, that is almost a doubling in 4 years. And I think that's a very striking figure of growth. That does bode well. We will need to judge whether we can continue that pace of change to see if it's getting better in the UK. It does also strike a common message with a separate review, the Rose Review, which found that 1 in 3 UK entrepreneurs is female. And so I think we are beginning to get some validity to those kind of statistics to actually satisfy ourselves that we are dealing with a real change and not necessarily just a survey error, or indeed a survey that reflects only some part of the picture, not the full picture. And I think that we notice that as well as the change that is happening simply with ownership and participation, that we are also noticing how female entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial businesses run by females is also changing our society. The social impact question. One interesting analysis was offered by a UK company at WealthX. That's a global ultra high net worth intelligence and data company. And they spotted a rather interesting facet about how we define wealth. If you ask a man how he defines wealth, he defines it very much in economic terms, in financial terms. It's about GDP, it's about profit, it's about the kind of capital inflows and outflows of any business. Women, on the other hand, define wealth in a much broader concept, in a much broader definition. They add a much stronger kind of sense that wealth means emphasizing social as well as economic good. They agree that it's important to protect the livelihood of employees, of their customers, of the wider society that they work in. And a much larger share of women entrepreneurs say that that's important. 73% of women entrepreneurs say that that is an important part. And only 65% of men make that same statement. And so you do see that there is a much higher level of engagement, a much higher level of awareness about the social responsibility that companies and businesses need to play in the current day and age. And I think it's very encouraging that women are taking such a prominent view in the way they want to run their business and the way they want to try and advance. And I think it also connects them better with businesses. I haven't seen a statistic, but I would really welcome a statistic that showed whether women entrepreneurs tend to achieve higher success rates because of that better social connectivity, because of that social impact, where they're aware of what their customers are doing and thinking and behaving, aware of what their employees need, so that they tend to be stronger, more robust, more balanced companies where they can play a stronger role. It's interesting also, I think, to look at how the conversation has changed in the UK, how investing in the community has become a much stronger part of our social awareness, recognizing that local is always better, and that where you can source locally, where you can purchase locally from small and medium-sized businesses, where you can take a much stronger view of your supply chain and take that due diligence, that responsibility to ensure that your supply chain is following the similar kind of attitudes and trends, where women are represented and where that social impact is measured more carefully. That is coming through in particular industries like the textile industry, where consumers are making decisions, and our retail sector, our textile retail sector, is having to be much more careful in what the kind of goods it sources, that these are coming from sustainable sources, from good companies that have good labor conditions, where people are properly treated, are looked after well by that company. And that becomes really important, that all the way down the supply chain, we are seeing that social impact strike through. And I think that's a very striking effect, because I think it does show that in a global world where our connectivity is global, where we are sourcing from all around the world, we are paying greater attention to where we source, why we source, and what that sourcing involves. I attended a conversation not long ago about the mining sector in Rajasthan, and understood how much that social responsibility really matters in the mining sector, and getting those issues understood and properly thought through, and that sourcing from these areas was really important. And so I'm struck by the fact that change in the UK is beginning to have an impact wherever the UK does business. And I'm also struck that very clearly we are seeing that change happen here in India, in many other countries too. And it might not be that the change in India is happening as fast, but I want to add a strong word of encouragement to all the women that are speaking today, to all the businesses that have been active in this space over the past few years, but most importantly to the women in our audience who are thinking of their future, who are thinking about how they might take their role in society. The word of encouragement is simple: to persevere, to stick at this. I think the patience and perseverance that women show in so many other facets of life is equally necessary in this kind of area, to try and achieve the change where we can make a significant impact on our social conditions, where we can improve conditions for workers, for employees. We can improve the conditions on which business trade with each other. We can improve the society we live in so that we are more responsible, we are more aware, and we can understand the impacts, whether it's an environmental impact with climate change and pollution, whether it's much more about how we look after each other as human beings and how we can support our particular causes. And I'm particularly, I think, I'm struck by how in India we are beginning to see this change. We know that women in India are ambitious. Gujarat is the land of the entrepreneur, and there are many very strong, very vibrant women entrepreneurs active in Gujarat. But I wouldn't want to single out just Gujarat. It is across the entire Indian nation that we want to try and encourage this change to take place. We know that there are structural barriers, societal barriers that are out there to thwart, to challenge, to delay, to try and obstruct their path to success. Those are really challenging. Sometimes it's that unconscious bias that holds us back. Sometimes it's much more obvious things: gender pay gap, working conditions, the lack of support for families, which make it very difficult for them. But we are seeing a change, and we are noticing that when the case for promoting women entrepreneurs is made, we see, I think a recent study showed this, that the gender gap is if we could close the gender gap, we can increase India's GDP by 7%. We can see quite a significant economic uplift for the entire country if we can encourage more female entrepreneurs and more females to take their part in business. India has come a really long way in increasing women's participation in education and in some of the smaller enterprises, some of those we call them in the UK cottage industries, the arts and the crafts and those small businesses where there's only perhaps 2 or 3 employees. We need to see that grow. We need to see that stimulated up into the medium-sized businesses so that we can get a greater traction and a greater success rate for women entrepreneurs. We look across the corporate sector in India and we do notice women rising to the top in the boardrooms of many of the largest companies. That is a change which I'm delighted to see. It needs to go even further so we can have those stronger role models for other women to follow. And that would be particularly strong. And I think corporates in India are listening. They're beginning to see a change in their behavior and in their success. That a better balance in the boardroom leads to better profit. A better balance in the boardroom leads to a much more connected workforce, a much more connected sales force where they can understand the driving forces for change in the community and what may or may not make a difference to their own bottom line. And so supporting CSR initiatives, looking to help NGOs do the work that they do, giving them that leg up so that they can take forward their particular action is a vital part of the future. And so I think I want to speak out with words of encouragement to women entrepreneurs. I want to join with all the women today in recognizing International Women's Day. My very small and humble perspective, offering a view that the UK has changed in 4 years, is a strong signal that India can also change, and hopefully as quickly, even quicker if possible, but that there is a real chance that we can make that breakthrough. There is a real chance that we can have a more connected, balanced business sector in our society. And we can also notice that the social impact that our female entrepreneurs can bring really makes the telling difference to the way our society behaves. I think that would be a really important sign of the 21st, the 22nd centuries. We need to prepare even further ahead. I forget we're 20 years into this century. It wasn't that long ago I felt I was a millennium man, and now I'm already looking forward to the next century. But I think this is the kind of change we need to make. We need to start now. And I'm so pleased to be joining this panel and adding my very small, humble voice to what I hope will be a much louder chorus of people calling for this kind of change. Thank you so much for the chance to talk to you all today. I'm really pleased to participate. Thank you.
Rebecca, your mic's on mute.
Thank you so much. This was really encouraging. I would now request Mr. Dheeraj Bhojwani to present his concluding remarks.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thank you, Peter. This was genuinely a very, very encouraging participation from you and very great guidance to the women entrepreneurs, especially the kind of work UK has done into this domain. We understand as far as social entrepreneurship goes, there is too much work which has been done in UK, and you bring a lot of perspective there. So my special thanks to you. Anshu, again, very thanks for your time. You bring in a lot of national viewpoint as far as the social entrepreneurship and women's participation in social enterprises concerned. So it was very good, great from our audience perspective to have you on this panel. And Shikha, once again, thank you. Whenever we listen to you, we feel encouraged to have probably more women participating in the entrepreneurship space. And as far as Gujarat University is concerned, our incubators are concerned, we commit that our teams and our infrastructure will always be there to promote women entrepreneurship in all the sectors, not only in social entrepreneurship space, but in all the sectors of the entrepreneurship. We have tremendous programs lined up in the coming year, which will continue supporting women entrepreneurs, which will try to promote more women's participation in the mainstream entrepreneurship too, especially in the STEM and STEAM areas. And the university takes pride into all the initiatives that have been done earlier, and there are more to come in the coming days, which will promote participation of women not only in the entrepreneurship area but in education and other areas of life as well. So, on behalf of Gujarat University and the incubators, I thank all the panelists for their participation and their time. Over to you, Rebecca.
Thank you. I would like to thank all the dignitaries and speakers for their thought-provoking insights today. I'd also like to thank our wonderful audience for gracing us for this evening. Stay tuned for our next panel discussion on nurturing women entrepreneurship for sustainable development goals with UNICEF, which shall consist of women sharing how women entrepreneurship shall help us achieve the SDGs. We will now disperse for a short break. Thank you for staying put. I'll see you in the final session that will begin at 4:30 p.m. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Anshu. Thanks, Shikha. Thanks, Rahul. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, everyone. Great session. Thank you, Peter, Anshu, Shikha. Take care.